Okay, everybody, let's get into adding some characteristics to our keyframes. We've talked a little bit about easing and everything, but let me kind of talk a little bit about how you can avoid accidentally adding keyframes where you don't want them, how to uncover and hide them, how to keep your workspace tidy, and how to just put some of the final touches on your keyframes to make your animations have a little bit more polish to them. So right now I'm going to start by making a new composition. So let's just click on this. New composition. 1920 by 1080. I like 23.98 frames a second. It really doesn't matter. I'm just used to 24 frames per second. And right now I'm just going to make the duration of this 10 seconds long. So I'm going to type in 10 and then 00 to round it off to 10 seconds and 0 frames. All right, so click OK, and the name is comp1, but that's fine. We'll just leave it there. All right, so let's animate a rectangle. Okay, let's just start by making a rectangle right here in the middle of the screen. Now, see my anchor point? If I grab my rotation tool with my W and select the layer, and it'll rotate like this. Okay, that's because the anchor point of a solid or of a shape layer, no matter where you draw your shape, the anchor point is going to default to the center of your composition. Okay, so what you want is to have your anchor point in the middle of your object or somewhere that your object can orient around. The key command for putting your anchor point in the center of your object is Command Option Home, and that'll put it in the middle. Now, if you want to put your object back in the middle of your composition, it's Command Home, and that'll put it in the middle. Now when I rotate it, it's rotating around the center of itself. Okay? So let's just start, well, I'm going to make this a different color. So let's make it Weaver purple. Make the stroke bigger. Okay. All right, so does anybody remember the key command to activate the keyframes for the position properties? So the letter P will reveal the position attributes, right? And we can click on the stopwatch to activate keyframes and create that first keyframe right there. But the keyboard shortcut for that is Option P. Okay, so that'll turn on keyframes and put a keyframe right where my playhead is. Option P also, if I advance my playhead to 1 second, Option P will add a keyframe wherever this is. That just added a keyframe right there. Okay, so what's going to happen if I scrub between these two keyframes right now? Nothing, because I didn't change any values, right? I just added keyframes. So I can just keep doing that forever and ever and not actually move it. But just as a note, if my playhead is at 1 second and I come up here and with my selection tool, I move this, it's going to add a keyframe right there. Okay? Because keyframes are already turned on for the position value. Now, one of the problems you're going to run into is you're building your animation and your objects are all over the place and you think to yourself, oh, I didn't want that to end there. I wanted it to end there. But guess what I did? I added another keyframe right here when really what I wanted for that keyframe is to be right here. So watch what happens. It goes up, it does this little bounce pass, and it drifts into that place. Okay, so what's a good way to avoid accidentally adding keyframes? Because like next thing you know, you just got your object bouncing all over the place on accident. If it's already moving, just make sure you have your keyframes open, and you can just click on the little diamond next to your position keyframe here, and that says go to previous keyframe, and that'll put your playhead right there. Another handy keyboard shortcut for just kind of moving your playhead to the previous keyframe is J. J will go to the previous one, and K will go to the next one. And that applies to any keyframes that might be open, revealed on your timeline. Okay. So right now we've got. Now I'm gonna go ahead and kind of start this over. Undo that. Undo that. When I'm animating, especially when I'm dealing with artwork that is a kind of a completed picture, if you build your scene, you say, this is where I want the animation to end. Like when all these objects come together, I want it to stop here. So what I usually do is go to the point in time where I want it to stop moving, and I want everything to come together. And I add, you know, a position keyframe, a scale keyframe, and a rotation keyframe. Not always rotation, because you're not always going to be rotating your object, but let's say this is where I want it to end. Then what you do is you go back to the beginning, and you determine where you want it to come from. Right now I'm going to just pretend that I want it to come from off screen. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this off screen and just drop it there. So right now, because I changed that value, my playhead was at the beginning, it added the position keyframe. So let's just, I'm going to delete the scale and position, or scale and rotation keyframes, and just talk about the way you ease your keyframes to give them a better, or a different look than just watching it come in, hit that brick wall, and stop. Okay. Clunk. So is that a natural motion? Like if the object has any weight, is it just going to suddenly stop? Or do you need to like push against it and slow it down before it can stop? It needs to slow down first, right? So that's where easy ease comes in. I'm just going to tell you the keyframe or the keyboard shortcut right now, because we're going to use it like a bunch of times today. It's F9. That's easy ease. So function on your Apple keyboard and then F9. That adds easy ease. Now by default, the magnitude of that keyframe is 33%. And that's always just like the default easy ease. So it goes in and it slows down slightly before it stops. So that's nice looking, right? Yeah? All right. So let's go in now and look at the graph editor. So I'm going to select this keyframe so that I make sure my position properties are activated. And I'm going to click this little symbol right here, right next to where your timeline meets up with your columns. That's the graph editor. Yours might look like this. Yours might be a yellow line that goes down to the bottom of a baseline. If yours looks like this, then what I want you to do is go down here, click on this menu, the choose graph type and options, and select edit speed graph. Do you get it? Yes. Okay, so let me know if yours doesn't look like this. It's a white line. I said yellow, but it's white. Yours does not look like this?
No, I was going to ask you, how did you get there again?
This button, this icon, that's your graph editor.
Okay.
And if you can't see this line, then you need to make sure that your position properties are selected for this layer. Okay? So check it out. What this graph means is I'm going to move at a faster speed, and this means I'm slowing down to stop. So when it touches the bottom, that means it's stopped. Now watch what happens if I grab this handle off to the left of this keyframe. This yellow square right here, that is that keyframe, okay? So I'm going to go back here, that's highlighted. If I drag this away and create a steeper slope, like let's bring it all the way over to 100, that went from 600 pixels per second up to 2000 pixels per second at its fastest speed. Okay, so now watch the difference. Okay, so really quick. Now it's just floating down into place. Okay. So if I grab this second one and I put this handle right smack up against this keyframe, now it's going to come in super fast and almost come to a stop by the time it is stopped. Whew. This preview is going terrible. Okay. It's because this computer is trying to run this second monitor and the projector at the same time. Okay. So does that make a difference to you? Can you kind of see the difference? So that's one way you can get it to flip in. All right. So let's do the opposite. Let's go forward to like 4 seconds here. Hit Option P so that it'll add a keyframe but not change the value. And I want it to fly off the screen now. I'm going to put my playhead at 5 seconds. So this will take 1 second to go from here over to here. Okay, so it flies in and then flies off. And it's kind of doing the same thing. Watch this. It's snapping and then gradually going off. But I want to do the opposite of that. So I'm going to go back into my graph editor and I'm going to make this handle, both of these handles go to the right so that it starts out slow and then flips off the screen really fast. Okay? Is that fun? So the alternative to that is I could select both of these keyframes, hold down Command, and click on them, and that'll turn them back into diamonds, which means if I go back to my graph editor, you'll see it. Move without warning, stop without warning, which looks like that. Okay. So let's talk about personal taste. Who likes the look of this? Clunk, clunk. Like just sudden move and then just constant velocity going off. Or who likes this? You like the gradual increase in speed? Okay. All right, let me do that same thing I just did to the second keyframe. So it'll speed up and then slow down. What'd you think of that movement? You like that one too? When something's flying off the screen, I want to make it look, this is me personally. When I've got something flying off the screen, I like to make it look like it's leaving and then is just going to continue to fly away at an increased rate. So I usually like it to be building up speed as it's leaving. So I leave the second one as a diamond, but I ease the first one. All right. Now, let's talk about just moving it from side to side. And I'm gonna create a few of these. So I'm gonna duplicate this twice. I'm gonna put one up here. I'm gonna put one down there, so that we can see these different graphs side by side and see what they're doing. So with all three of these selected, I'm gonna hit Command P to add a position keyframe right at the beginning of all three of these. and then I'm going to go forward to 1.5 seconds. And with all three of them selected, I'm going to just shift drag them over to the other side of the screen. Okay. So right now, all three of them are moving without increasing and without decreasing speed. They're just starting and stopping right away. So let's go to all six of these keyframes, drag a box around all six of them. And what's the key command for adding easy ease? F9, right? So on your Apple keyboard, you have to hit function key, hold down the function key, and then hit F9, and that'll do it. Okay. Now we've got gradual increase, gradual decrease. So let's look at the top one. I'm going to select the keyframes, the position property for the top one, select the graph editor, and I'm going to kind of pull both of these toward each other so that that number is roughly 70% on both sides. Okay. Now I'm going to go to the second one, hit and click on the position property, and I'm going to select these keyframes and pull only the left one up to about 80%. And then I'm going to go, so we've got this peak that's kind of pushed over to the side here. And then I'm going to go to the third one, select the position values, and I'm going to pull the handle of the right keyframe toward the left to about 80%. Okay. Now, I'm going to select all three of these so that I can see these graphs. One of them is going to start out moving fast and then slow down. One of them is going to whip through the middle, and one of them is going to increase slowly and then kind of whip to the end. Okay, so let's watch the difference. Okay, they all started moving at the same time and they all stopped moving at the same time, but the speed, the influence of that graph is what changed these three. Let me just do this. This one is, oh, I put them in the wrong places. Let's have these correlate. I want this one be at the bottom. So I'm kind of confused here. This one, okay. So the top one is doing the fastest in the middle right here. This one is doing the fastest early, and this one is doing the fastest later. Okay, so they all catch up and they land at the same time, but it's all slightly different. Okay. All right, let's do another thing. Did that kind of get your brains thinking about how you can manipulate the way objects are moving around the screen? All right, so here's another thing you can do. I'm going to just turn all these into diamonds again. So if I go to the graph editor, they're all exactly the same. And I'm going to give all of these the same easing at the end. But I'm going to have these first three keyframes start at different times. So top one, middle one, bottom one. And I want them to move in that order. So I want the top one to start moving first. So that one's there. And I'm going to move forward a little bit and drag this second keyframe to the playhead. Have them move forward a little bit and have this third one go to the playhead. And then I'm just going to add the easing to this one as well. So just F9 there. So now they're all starting moving at the same time, but they're all ending up in their ending places at the same time. So watch this. And then you can do the opposite. You can just grab the two keyframes of this one, move them back, So now they're all going to leave at the same time, but they're going to get to their ending spots at different times. Okay, so different looks there. So now let's talk about quicker moves when you want something to move faster. So let's just go forward to 10 frames and pretend we want all three of these to land at the other side at 10 frames. So it's a pretty quick move, not super fast, but pretty quick, right? So let's do one of these. Let's have this frame end, or this keyframe go a couple sooner. I don't know, wait. Let's like have it bounce into place. What would you do to make it bounce into place? You would need a keyframe earlier so that it was like past the point that it's going to stop. And then you would almost want it to kind of like come back. Whoops. Let's move this one forward a little bit. And then come back and then end up where it wants to end up. Boing. Boing. Interesting, right? Fun. Usually what I might do on this also is just kind of tweak these keyframes. So maybe the first one smacked against the wall and then bounced back. Versus slowing down. Well, those keyframes are all pretty close together. But so here's another little tip. Let's say I like this, but it's all happening too fast. I want the whole thing to slow down. If I draw a box around all these keyframes, then hold down my Option key and grab the last keyframe in the group, drag it to the right, it'll kind of spread them out so that it can slow the whole animation down. Every keyframe that I had selected. So fun, right? All right, here's a fun thing when it comes to bouncing. Let me just do this with one. And I'm going to add some scale and rotation to this as well. So what I'm going to do is have it fly in from off screen, have it kind of swoop over here, slow down a whole bunch, and then return to the middle. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to add my first keyframe here, go back to the beginning of the timeline, hit Command or Option P to add a keyframe. Then I'll go forward to like 1 second and slide it to the side. Then I want it to come back somewhere into the middle, not at 2 seconds, maybe like 1.5 seconds, and have it end up in the middle. Okay. So what I need to do is get it to come out here, come to a really subtle stop, but then come back this way. And right now it's just coming, smacking against the end, bam, and then coming back. Okay. But I want it to float. I want it to make it almost look like it's a piece of paper that's coming out and then floating back into the middle. Okay. So what I need to do is, first of all, I want it to come in really fast. So I'm not going to add any easing to this first keyframe. I'm going to add easing to the second 2 keyframes. So F9, right? And now to really tweak this, I want to go in my graph editor, and because I want it to come in really fast and settle into this spot, I'm going to pull this, whoops, I'm pulling both of them. Just draw a box around this second one to select the second one. And I want this second one to really settle in. So I'm gonna drag this one over to like 90%. And then let's see what happens if I just leave these second 2 keyframes at their default setting. See how we like it. Okay, so it does like a little flip thing. Now check out what's happening here. If I go right here, Some of you may have had something similar to this happen already. By default, After Effects is going to add an auto Bezier, which means it's going to pretend you're trying to curve the line from one position keyframe to another. So watch what happens if I go to this third keyframe and I drag it up. See how that line is kind of doing a little bend? This is where keyframe interpolation comes in handy, because this little extra bend out to the side here is happening. See this handle out here? It's happening. Even though I just want it to go to the side and then come back. It's kind of overshooting it a little bit. So what I need to do is right click on this keyframe, and I can do it in the graph editor or in my regular timeline. I need to right click on this, select keyframe interpolation, and then under spatial interpolation, if I change that to linear, what it'll do is it'll go to that keyframe and go only to that keyframe and then straight to the next keyframe. So if I move this keyframe up, it's now going to go straight here, straight there, instead of trying to bend around. Okay, so that's going to be helpful in making us really kind of slide to the side and then stop. But now we need to add easing to the other side of this, because it's kind of like bouncing back too quickly. So I'm going to go into my graph editor and pull that this way a little bit, and I might need to spread these out, slow them down, but let's see what it looks like now. Okay. So depending on how far back we want it to come, like if we wanted it to settle here, maybe it wouldn't need as much time. So let's just experiment and pull this back this way. Actually, let's do this 3 times. Let's duplicate this. And now here's a little tip for you. If you select position for this second layer, it selects all those keyframes. And so long as your playhead is on a keyframe, if I move this object now, it moves all those keyframes that are selected. Okay. All right, so now let's see what happens if I pull this one this way, and then I just change the timing of this one. And this is how I keyframe animations, even with like 2 objects floating next to each other. I'm like, I didn't really like how 1 second felt, so I made it come in faster, and then one of them still goes into their finishing spot sooner. But let's see what happens if they both come back this way. That's kind of cool. So the timing of their keyframes is all the same, but they're moving to different places on the screen. That's kind of fun. Let's make a third one. Duplicate that. Put this one down. Whoops. Position. Okay. See, I selected position, but when I went to drag it, it created a new keyframe. That's because my playhead wasn't on a keyframe already. So I'm going to go back to a keyframe, select these 3, put this one down here, and let's take this one keyframe, drag it back to here, see what it looks like. Oops, I messed up. See? I have to fix my crap all the time too. All right, here we go. Now we can do another fun thing and change the timing of these. See what that looks like. So they're coming in at different times, settling at different times, but like they're all finishing their animation at the same time. Okay. All right, so let's add some rotation keyframes here. I'm going to delete these second two. So this one's flying in from here. Let's do Option R on this middle one to make sure that this is where I want the rotation to end up. And actually, I should have put it here on this third one. So let's go here, put it there. Now I want it to spin in and end up here. So I'm kind of like reverse animating so that it like settles there. And then since I'm going that way, I want to rotate the other direction so that as it flies in, it goes whee. Okay, but now I need to add lots of easing to these. So I'm going to hit F9 on those two keyframes. And maybe not go vertical on this one. I might want it to like end up there so it really is almost like it's floating down. Oops. I did that with both of those keyframes selected. There. Now I think I've got it rotating too many times before it hits here. I think I might only want it to rotate like this much. Okay. And one thing I like to do sometimes is I actually will type in the values for keyframe velocity. But another thing you can do is kind of zoom in on this keyframe. And with my rotation and my position selected at the same time, if I can bring this rotation handle out here to match up with the position handle, then they'll have an even more similar velocity. So it looks almost like the rotation is kind of tied to the position. It's like the faster it's moving, the faster it's rotating. All right, so let's add some scale keyframes. This will be fun. I'm going to add it right here just so I can see what it's doing. This is 100%. I'm going to just make sure that that keyframe is where this ends up because this is the size I want it to be. So if I make it start out really, really small, and then when it's on the side here, if I make it really, really big, then we can almost make it look like it's flying at us and then going back. So now we have to adjust the easing on those. So now that I've got multiple properties going at the same time, I want them all to move in tandem. So the way to do that is with all 6 of these last keyframes for position, rotation, and scale selected, if I go to my graph editor, I'll show you what's happening. If I hit F9 right now, it changes all their velocity to that 33% again. But what I can do is I can select, because I have the line for all of these here, this yellow handle now, because I selected all 3 of these are selected. If I pull it back this way, it changes the value to all of them to the same value. Same with this side. Okay, so now with all of them moving in tandem, it looks like it's kind of flying in at you and then going away. And that's without doing 3D. Like you can do the same thing in 3D space. Now just for fun, to add an extra dimension to this, I'm going to drag this position keyframe up and bend this line down so that it looks a little bit more like it's kind of floating down and going into place. Okay. So all that work just to make one object kind of fly in pretty and end up in place. So there are plugins that you can get that help this go faster, but those are the principles that are at play. That now, one thing that I've learned over the past, if you guys want to know another keyboard shortcut, is Command-Shift-K will allow you to type in the values, but you have to do it property at a time. You can't just select all three of these, Command-Shift-K, and say, oh, I want this to be exactly 75, 75, because this is doing it to the scale property. If you want to type in the values, you can do it that way, but then you have to do it to the position value and then again to the rotation value. But it comes in handy if you really like the way 7070 looks. You can just hit Command-Shift-K and type in 70 for the velocity of incoming and outgoing. It'll be a really nice looking little whip move. So, any questions so far? What can I help you with? Were you like, oh man, I wish I could make something kind of fly in this way and that way? Okay, let's do one last thing. No, that's not. I want to delete all these keyframes. Now this one. Okay, so I got my object in the middle again. I'm going to just add some keyframes. So position here. Whoops, I need to go forward a bit. Then position here, then go forward a bit, go here, go forward a bit, go here, go forward a bit, and in the middle, so Command Home. Okay, so right now I've got this object that is, each of these keyframes is 12 frames apart, but the keyframes aren't all the same distance apart from each other, so it's going to go kind of different speeds from one to the next. But I want it to follow this path, but I want it to go at an even speed from one to the next. The way I do that is, or from the first one to the last one, not from one to the next. Because watch what happens if I add easing to all of them. It'll go from one, stop, 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 stop. Okay, so it kind of like, if you look at the graph editor, it goes to this one, slows down, goes to this one, slows down. And maybe you want that. Like you could grab all of these and grab all their handles and really make it whip from one to the next. Okay, if that's what you want. But I want all of these to have the same speed across all these keyframes. So if I right click on this and select Rove Across Time, it'll take those three middle ones and it'll change the timing of them so that the speed of those position keyframes follows one arc across all of them. Okay? So now it's going to come in, go woo. And then another thing I might want to do, because I didn't like the way that looked, I'm going to round this out a bunch so that it takes more of an elliptical path around all these keyframes. Okay, so now maybe this will be more pleasing to watch. Okay. So that's what roving across time means. So again, it's kind of what you're going for. You know, if you want, oh, okay. So you guys remember the text chapter when you had like a mask path that you pasted the position of the bumblebee to, or the car? It was a car that went through the S shape, right? So let me just do that for you again. We need to get a mask, so I'm going to create a new solid layer with Command Y. Click OK. Grab my pen tool with the letter G and create a better, like a more precise path that I want this to follow. So that mask has a path, and if you hit M, that'll bring up your mask path. You can take this path, hit Command C, and then you can paste it to the position of, I'm going to turn off all these keyframes. You can paste that to the position of a layer. So I would have to select the position value and then just hit Command V, and that pastes all of that right there. Lovely. And again, because it looks like it's going faster and faster and faster toward the middle, I'm going to add easing to the second one for sure, and the first one, but I'm going to make the handle of the second one pull this way a little bit more so that it'll slow down as it gets into the middle. Fun, right? Super fun. Question? Yep. So I drew a mask on the gray solid, right? Let me put this below so you can see it. Hit M to, in your timeline, show the mask path. Select mask path. Hit Command C. Then click on the position property of the layer that you want to paste that path, and it'll put the coordinates of that path onto the position value. Did that work? Yep, okay. Now you can add your easing. Now, so we've got roving across time with every point in between, just to kind of like do that same thing that I was telling you before, so that the distribution of the speed is spread evenly across all those keyframes. But I basically just took the, oops, with your selection tool, you can just grab a keyframe in your graph editor and adjust them. So you don't have to add easing first. You can just do it right in your graph editor. Draw the curvature as you like. All right, and then just to review, I can have, if I, let me draw in this layer, let me draw a little arrow. Some funky arrow. Hold on. I gotta zoom in here. All right, this is like the weirdest arrow anybody's ever drawn. I'm gonna go just real quick. I drew a second shape inside my shape layer. It's just gonna delete the rectangle and save that shape. Change the anchor point so that it's somewhere around here. And now I'm going to auto-orient this. I can't remember how to do this using menus. It's Command Option O to bring up your orientation settings. If we select Orient along the path, click OK, then we can adjust its rotation so that that tail is pointed down the direction of the path. Now let's see what happens. Whee! Fun, right? It's darling. All right. And then if you wanted to get really crazy with this, you could also, I'm getting ahead of myself. You can animate this path so that, like, as it's moving faster, you can have it, oh, G. There, got it. You could like have the tail get longer and then bend it. Come on, Scott. You're supposed to be showing off here. All right, putting that out that way. Putting that out that way. So that like, and then you would have to go in like very carefully, frame, almost kind of frame by frame, to make it look like the turning of that is being motivated by yeah. So much fun. Put this one. Ooh, don't bend that out so far. Crap. All right, yeah, that's just showing off, I guess. All right. It's like a little tadpole or something else on accident. All right. Now the one thing that'll always make everything look better is some motion blur. So I'm going to turn motion blur on here and here and watch it again. All right. And then you have it expand, and then your logo comes out from that. So we're going to get into this a little bit later, but that principle of pasting like mask path onto the properties of something, that works for any effect that has a coordinate of x and y. So you can say, oh, I want this lens flare to move exactly like this. Well, you draw a path on some other layer, and then you copy those positions onto the coordinates of your lens flare. You can also do it with, well, like I say, any effect that has a coordinate based. But I also, now that I've taken these position keyframes and I've very carefully eased them, I can now take these position keyframes and paste them onto the coordinates of effects as well. So, or, yeah, okay, that'll get a little bit more advanced. Today was supposed to be all about helping you keyframe. So, any questions about keyframes and how you can manipulate keyframes? All right, let me do one last thing, and that is do something in 3D space, because After Effects is really good at 3D space. All right, let's get rid of this, get rid of that. Let's create another rectangle. Actually, let's create something more fun than just a rectangle. Let's create this, do another one, another one. I'm doing all this on the same shape layer. Okay, so I got a little grid here. And I'm going to take my gray solid, put it behind it, okay? And I'm going to make both of these layers 3D. I'm going to create a new camera. This is muscle memory again. It's Command Option Shift C, or you can right click in the negative space, New Camera. I'm just going to use this 50mm one. That's fine. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what this looks like from two different angles. So I'm going to go to my little one view drop down menu here and select two views horizontal. So select there. And this one on the left is looking at this solid and these rectangles from the top, which, because there's no dimension to them, they just look like flat objects, like you're looking at the top of a piece of paper. So what I'm going to do is slide this, this gray solid back a little bit. And if you look on the right side of this, it looks like it's getting smaller, but it's getting smaller from the point of view of the camera, because as objects move farther away, they get smaller, right? My daughters are like, my 4-year-old's asking me like, why is that so small? I'm like, well, because it's far away. Why did they draw that dinosaur so small? Well, because it was far away. All right. Because we went to go see Early Man, or what is it? Yeah, Early Man. And there's the part where this like caveman throws a rock at a duck, thinking he's going to have it for dinner. But then you realize that the duck was just really, really far away. But it is this giant duck that comes and chases after him. So I was like, it's optical illusion. Why is it so small if it's so big? All right, so so now we have some separation. I just moved that backward, but I had to, while I was talking about Ancient Man, I grabbed the scale properties of that solid layer and I made it bigger so that it would expand out of the edges of the screen. Okay, all right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have this shape layer zoom physically, virtually physically, past the camera. Okay, this is a better way of making something really big come from off the edges of the screen, then come down into view, than scaling it up to like 5,000%. Because in order to just scale this up so that it goes outside the view, let me see. Oh, 2,300%. Okay. So let's just use position keyframes. So again, Command P. And that's where I want it to end. So I don't want that keyframe at the beginning. I want that one where I want it to end. So I'm just going to grab this keyframe to 1 second. And now I'm going to grab the Z handle of my shape layer, which is already activated, and pull it down past the camera. Okay, anywhere past the camera will do. And now, watch this. Yoo! Okay. And again, we can take this path, and I'm looking at it from the top. So all I'm doing is making this path bend so that it goes sideways as it goes into its final spot. And then again, you could orient that to the path so that as it's moving, it's like twisting and turning with the path. See how cool that is? So cool. But guess what I want to do even more than that? I want to ease it, right? Because I hate non-eased movement. All right. When you're like throwing something on the screen like this, you can do it either way. You can either have it whiz past the camera and settle into place by adding lots of easing to your second keyframe. So settle, okay? Making sound effects with your mouth helps. I've had people give me crap. Why are you back there making sound effects? It helps. Or you can slam it down into place, which would be adding lots and lots of easing on the first one. So I'm going to do that. And wow. The difference here, what I would do with that is I'd probably make it happen a lot faster. So it slams into place. And then I would likely go to like the position and rotation of the camera and add some jiggles so that it actually kind of made it do a bit of a jolt. And then let's rotate it back that way. And then drag the position back this way. And then put it back where it belongs. There and there. Let's see. Probably want all this to happen faster, so I'll just use my Option key and scrunch those together. And let's see. I'm going to scale this solid up a bunch more too, so that as the camera does its rotation thing, I don't see the edges of it. not very extreme. Anyway, you get the idea. See, this is another one that I could just sit here and muck with for like ages. Boom. Maybe just add some easing to all of these. It drives me crazy to not have it look sort of good. All right, yeah, there, see, very slight. I'm going to add even more extreme to that. And now for this first keyframe, because I really want it to like appear, I'm going to pull it back this way till it's barely off the screen. All right, now let's see. Yeah. Let's add some motion blur. Fun. It's darling. All right. Now just like a real quick review from last time, let's create a new light. Make it cast some shadows. Give it some diffusion, make it not quite so dark. Click OK. That's interesting. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. That's weird. Okay, pull the light back. Change the cone angle. And we need this. We need our shape layer to cast shadows. So let's twirl it up, twirl it down, twirl down the material options. Tell it to cast shadows. There we go. Let's bring this background object a little bit closer so that we can actually see that shadow. And I'm going to go to my light and darken the shadow a bunch. Whoops. Yay. Okay. Okay, we got magic. What do you think? It's like that thing hits the background so hard that I love that like you can pass objects through lights and have it catch the light as it's flying in. Oh man. All right, any questions? Did I lose you there on that last bit? Hope not too much. All right, fun stuff. How long am I so far? Well, that was an hour, almost exactly an hour. Any questions? We got like one more minute till I hit an hour. No? Oh, okay, to show the different, so from, you click on this, the question was, how do you see this from the different views? This drop-down menu, the 2 view, 1 view, it's right there. And then if I select on this side, I can switch the angle of this one to front, left, top, back, right, bottom. I like looking at it from the top because I pretend I'm like building a Lego scene. And I'm like, because you know, when you're Zach the Lego maniac, you don't look at your Legos from the bottom. You look at them from the top and you move them around like that. So that's how that's my paradigm. Question?
How did you do the, so you know how it comes in, right?
Uh-huh.
How did you have it where it's in the direction of where it's coming from instead of just like going in 2D? I don't know how.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
So if you look at it from the top, like your hands, so pretend I'm looking at my hands from the top. I have the camera back here, so it's like setting the camera here and then moving the object in this direction.
Yeah.
So that you understand, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to know is how to get it to like turn.
Yeah, how, I don't know what you click, but you click something where like instead of it coming in like this,
Yeah.
where it would come in like that.
So in order to do that, I did the orient along path option,
Oh,
but the way I curved it was, if you look at it from the top again, and I select it, there's these little dots along the position line right here. Those are actual frames that it's landing on. And then what I do is I try to select one of them so that I can get these handles to show up. And then that'll allow me to kind of bend it out to the side. And if it's auto-oriented along path, then it'll automatically just turn along the path as the path turns.
okay.
So that's what this one.
How do you activate auto orient?
The auto-orient, if you right-click on the layer and select it's Command Option O. Yeah, Command Option O. Keyframe Assistant, no, layer. Transform, oh, it's in the transform menu. Okay, so you right click on it, go to transform, auto orient, there it is. Command Option 0 or Command Option O for orient. All right. Let me do one little thing. I know this is kind of crazy, but let's add some Z rotation to this object so that it kind of hits and then twists a bit on its own. So we got like twisting from it, and then we got twisting from the camera. I'm just looking at this to see what I think. This one definitely needs easing. So, yeah, fun. All right, I'm going to end the recording there. We can talk more.